Hello and welcome again. Today's presentation is called Flipping CELTA, which may be a sentiment that you've expressed yourself once in a while, but I'm not thinking about it in that way. I'm thinking about flipping the classroom. So you may ask, what is the flipped classroom? The flipped classroom is an idea that's gained currency over the last few years. So if you look at a traditional class, you've got the teacher giving a potentially one-size-fits-all presentation in class, followed by learners at home on their own doing homework, which is then an application of that presentation. The flipped classroom turns that on its head, so the homework goes first, in which you watch the one-size-fits-all presentation at home that the lecturer's already recorded. You can watch it as many times as you like, clearly. And then in class, there's clearly more time for collaboration with peers, for practical application of that knowledge, for construction of knowledge through talk, at a time when the teacher is there to support you. So the theory behind this is that if you look at something like Bloom's taxonomy, you're focusing on those lower order skills outside of class, where the learner has more autonomy, where the teacher's not involved. They can learn that stuff on their own, and then they can have support in class with those higher order thinking skills when the teacher's actually there. So this approach is clearly deeply grounded in a social constructivist kind of idea. So we've got Vygotsky contended that education is not imitation, but it's developing higher order skills through the use of language to mediate understanding. So a really important part of that process is providing opportunities for learners to construct new knowledge by processing it in talk with others. And that's a central tenet of this flipped approach. Learner autonomy is clearly a really important part of this too. It puts a lot of responsibility on the learner and allows them more chance to be independent in this way. So if we look at a brief history of this, it's not a new idea by any means. I think it has its roots firmly embedded in higher education seminar type of work, where students would go and read and come back and discuss in a seminar situation what they've learnt. So this isn't new, but with the advent of technology, things have become a lot more possible, perhaps, than they were previously. The idea has really taken off in the States, particularly in mainstream education. If you Google this, you'll see I'm right, and there'll be a lot of people who are praising this to the hilt. But it's not just anecdotal evidence. There is some research evidence to prove that it has a good effect. So Lovett, Meyer and Thiel compared online delivery and face-to-face delivery of their 15-week statistics course and found that there was no difference in the final results of these two methods of delivery. Having then done that, they then compared their online delivery with a flipped delivery, where people accessed videos beforehand and then came to class to implement their knowledge, if you like, or cement their knowledge, to apply what they'd learned. They found that with these two approaches, learners had the same amount of learning. They're both able to pass the test. The difference was that the online delivery course was 15 weeks and the flipped delivery was only 7.5. It was half the time. There was also some evidence that 6 months later, the people who'd done the flipped delivery were able to retain the information better. So that's quite a substantial kind of claim. Their explanation for this was that they felt that learners came to class ready to learn. that there was a real readiness because of the videos. And this, makes perfect sense, I guess, doesn't it? Some important pioneers of this movement in the States particularly have been Bergman and Sams, who work in a high school. They are chemistry teachers, and they've really pushed this, that they've published material and they talk about it a lot. And there's another man called Salman Khan who has the Khan Academy, the Gates Foundation money, Google behind that. If you look at it on the web, it's an amazing mathematical program. It's free, and if you haven't seen his TED talk, it's really worth listening to. It's fascinating. So that will give you probably more of an idea of the possibilities of the flipped classroom than I can. But you might be asking, well, this is all very interesting, but what does it have to do with me or CELTA? And I guess that CELTA's notoriously intensive. There's an awful lot to take on board in a really relatively short time, and there's not a lot of time for input. The input sessions are very limited. Well, everything's very limited, isn't it? But the emphasis is on the practical, as I think it should be, and there is limited time for input. Another issue is that the practical element often comes before the input. Because TP is starting right at the beginning of the course, we're often expecting things from learners that we haven't actually taught them yet, or things come up in feedback as well that haven't formally come up in input. Now, arguably this isn't a bad thing, and that being ready for the input because you've already encountered the problems in class is a good thing. So I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, but it's certainly a true thing, and I think trainees often feel uncomfortable because of it. So the potential benefits, I think, of taking a flipped approach to the input sessions in CELTA is that learners have a chance to preview what they're going to learn. They can look at stuff before the input session, and clearly, of course, they can revisit it afterwards. So I think this is another major advantage here, that you've got the chance to revisit input sessions. Another advantage that I see of this is that it frees up input time. I think input time already is very practically based in CELTA, but inevitably there's some presentation time there, so it helps to increase the application and reduce the presentation time, I think, and that I think has got to be a good thing. For me as well, the other big one was that I hoped it would give support with assignments, particularly with the language awareness assignment, because that's the one in my experience that learners most often have trouble with, most often have to rewrite. So I was interested in trying this out and see if it would work. But of course there are some potential problems. One of the ones that's often stated in the literature is that they won't have access to the internet. I think for our trainees that really wasn't an issue. There's certainly internet access at college even if they didn't have it at home, so that wasn't a big problem. But the big thing that concerned me was that they wouldn't watch the videos before the input sessions. CELTA, as we all know, is very hard work. There's not a lot of time to add anything extra in. So to ask people to, as well as preparing their classes and looking at the notes, whatever else, as well as that, to watch videos before input sessions, I really worried that they just wouldn't watch them. That was my major concern, I suppose. And then of course the other problem is that it's more work for tutors. Again, CELTA's intensive for us too, and to also say to people, well, you need to go make these videos as well, is another major task. I'd like to say that making these things takes no time at all, but I'd be lying. It is quite time consuming. But I suppose the flip side of that is that once they're made, so that's quite good, and you can, they're very reusable, and you don't have to make your own. You're very welcome to use mine, for example. They're freely available. I'll show you later. So, but that is an issue. You can't get around it. So I decided to have a go, and I decided to start out with one particular area, which was this sort of LA area. So I wanted to focus on trainees using concept check questions and language analysis, because I think these are often two really difficult areas. In our LA assignment, it's in two parts. So part one is looking at 3 vocabulary items at different levels, and trainees have to provide a definition of context and concept check questions for that. And then part 2 gives structures, and they have to look at MFP analysis, context, concept check questions, and possible situations in which they could be used, exercises to use them. The idea being that the concept check questions are introduced in part 1, that it's an easier in, if you like, before they're confronted with more difficult structures. So in order to support that, I made 3 short videos. One which was to do with concept checking vocabulary, one to do with structures, and one to do with analysing language generally, meaning form pron. I made these and I put them onto our Moodle site, and I asked trainees to watch them before the class. I made them with something called Camtasia Studio. This is a program, you have to buy it, it's not free. It's one that I've used quite a bit now and I really like, so that's why I've used it. But you could easily make this with any screen capture tool. My Brainshark, for example, offers a free service if the videos are public, and there are many other free screen capture tools on the net, so it doesn't have to cost you anything. How long were the videos? Now, I did think about this for some time and decided finally that about 15 minutes was as long as I could reasonably expect them to watch it. I was very aware of the fact that they may not watch the videos, so I didn't want to make them onerously long. This also meant that if anybody had missed it, they could potentially go and look at it quickly in the break before the next input session. I also made sure that there were quizzes within the video itself and also outside of the video in order for them to see if they got it. One of the things that is a potentially really interesting part of the flipped classroom is if you can get learners, trainees in this case, to ask any questions that they have on a forum, so that you as a teacher have got a good idea of the kind of things they're having trouble with before you go into class. I didn't actually manage to make this bit work, but I did think it was a nice idea. So I made these videos, and I'll show you a short snippet of the first one that I made about concept checking, so that you can get an idea of what it is that I've been doing. Have a look at this. These are ways that teachers may use to check meaning, but none of them are very good. So just have a look, stop me for a minute and think why you think these questions might not be really helpful. Okay, let's have a look at this first one. This is the one that you're definitely going to use, even despite, in fact, what I'm going to tell you now, because it's the obvious one that comes to your mind. What does so-and-so mean? The difficulty with this, and to give you an example, if I put that word in there, now I know you know what that means, but I think you would have difficulty in explaining it to me. So the problem with this often is that it's more difficult to explain a word than the word actually is. This is particularly true at low levels where learners don't have a lot of language to explain with. So it's linguistically more difficult to explain the meaning. So that's a problem. So that's not a helpful question.
if you ask this question, they might say no, but they're likely to say yes. And they're likely to say yes for a couple of reasons. One might be because they genuinely do understand. One might be because they don't understand but they're too embarrassed to say so. And one might be because they genuinely think they understand but they don't. So this is a good example because in French, so how can we check that they understand? So it's clear it's important that we do, so how do we do it? We ask closed questions, what are called concept check questions. So these are questions that usually have a yes or no answer or a short answer, so they're linguistically easy to answer, but in order to answer them they have to understand what they mean. So the first thing when you're writing these kind of questions is to really identify what the word means. And once you've done that, you just turn that meaning into a closed question. For example, let's have a look at an example. So, he managed to get to sleep. Now we're looking at the meaning of managed. Now if you look in a dictionary is helpful because although I know you know what managed means, sometimes it's hard to really pinpoint it when you know it automatically. So managed is the idea of trying to do something that wasn't easy but that you did do it. You succeeded. Okay, so those are the three elements, if you like, of the word managed. So if you tried something that was difficult and you didn't do it, then clearly that's not managing to do it. If you tried something that was easy, that wasn't managing to do it. Okay, so all you have to do then is to make these into questions. So did he try? And the answer is yes. Was it easy? The answer is no. And did he succeed? The answer is yes. So you can see by answering these short questions, yes, no, they're proving to you that they have understood what this means. And that's all there is to it. How easy is that? Now it does seem very straightforward like that, but these are a bit like crossword puzzles. The more practice you get at them, the easier they get, but at first they are a bit tricky.
So I made these videos and I got them to watch them before class, and then during the class we had a quick recap and then lots and lots of practical examples of, in this case, concept checking and analysing language. So I really hoped that this would help with the LA assignment in particular. Generally about 3 to 4 out of 6 of a TP group have to rewrite the LA assignment. They've not major rewrites, but tweaky bits here and there. They make some mistakes. With the first group that I did, I had high hopes. I thought, they've had so many examples now in class, they will know how to do this, and all of them had to rewrite the assignment. So instead of making it, well, I don't know if it made a difference or not, but they all got it wrong. So this knocked my confidence a little bit. I did it with another group and had better results, but still not significantly better than normal. So then I started thinking, well, actually maybe it's not such a brilliant thing as I had hoped. But was it useless? Well, no, I don't think it was. I asked people to fill in feedback sheets for me, and it turned out that they'd all watched the videos, so my fears that they wouldn't were actually groundless. Everybody did watch them, and a third of them watched them more than once and used them for to review as well as preview. The sort of comments that people made were that it mixes it up a bit from the boredom or rigour of books. Obviously I'm not so rigorous. That the content's bite-sized, so actually, although I was worried there would be something extra to do, they felt that this was a manageable extra. People found they liked the idea of being able to stop and start and review, and I thought that was quite a nice comment. It felt quite personal to them. And a couple of people made the comment that it did make the class easier to follow, so that they prepared you for the lesson, they got you thinking, and I guess that is the best sort of outcome, really. The other thing that I did was that I put the videos up on YouTube. Why not? And this has been, you know, surprisingly quite popular. I've got nearly 2,500 hits on YouTube for this particular video, which I know isn't going viral by YouTube standards, but it's a significant number. And I've had the odd comment like this one from somebody. Which really made me smile, and I think, you know, if somebody feels that it was that useful, then clearly I did something right in making the video. So whilst the thing didn't turn out as I expected, and I'm not sure that I would use it for every input session or anything else, I do think that having video support there for some sessions and having video support for learners to look back on and review the information, I think can be helpful. So all the materials that I've made quite a few now. They're all available free on my site, so please do feel free to use them. They're also on YouTube. If you go to elttraining.com and you click here, you'll get through to the Moodle site, and on the Moodle site it's that one at the bottom, free methodology training, and there are, as I say, now quite a few videos on grammar, teaching vocabulary, a few other bits and pieces as well. So if you click on any one of those icons, you'll go through to the videos. Please do use them. Let me know how you get on if you do, and I hope that they're helpful in some small way to you. Thanks very much. Bye bye.